I've bought a lot of branded title cars over the last several years. Minor wrecks, major wrecks, flood cars, lemon laws, even one that caught on fire. But what I tend to stay away from are the cars that come with a rebuilt title, which means someone has already saved this car from some sort of catastrophic incident, it's been repaired, and the state has issued them a title saying it's road legal again. The main reason is simple. If I'm not exactly sure how badly the car was damaged and how well that damage was repaired, then chances are a little bit of a discount isn't going to motivate me to deal with someone else's problem.
I always screw that up.
But what about a lot of bit of a discount? Because that's exactly what I got when I won this rebuilt title Z06 Corvette at auction with only 17,000 miles for just $16,000 all in. Sure, the body is in rough shape, but it's all here, and even a quick inspection of the structure proved to be pretty solid. There were some strange things like a bit of wire holding up one of the bumper mounts, but I didn't spend much time worrying about that as much as I did the condition of the LS7 engine, which surprisingly came with built heads and a camshaft upgrade. Getting it to run was a bit tricky. A loose battery terminal made it seem like the car had some major electrical gremlins, but a bit of tinfoil ingenuity and we were able to get it running and driving pretty decently until it died completely. What happens when we hit the button? Still acting up, huh? So I pushed it off the road, but I wanted to get this thing moved ASAP because you know the old saying, the grass is always greener when you don't leave a car parked over it and when you use Sunday, which is the best way to maintain your lawn. Whether you got Bermuda, Bahia, or Buffalo grass, Sunday can create you a custom lawn plan at a DIY-friendly price. Just hit the link in the description, type in your zip code, select your yard size, and Sunday will take care of the rest. My yard plan came with a few different types of nutrient packets and some easy-to-follow instructions. These packets contain 0 pesticides and no harsh chemicals, and they're formulated specifically for your lawn. I spend a lot of time laying on this grass. I like it clean and I like it green, and luckily Sunday takes care of all that for me so I can focus less on things like fertilizer ratios and more on how we're going to get this Corvette up and running right. Now, to get 30% off your own first custom lawn care plan, all you got to do is visit getsunday.com/samcrack and use code SAMCRACK30. Sunday is bound to have the ideal lawn care plan for your yard over at getsunday.com/samcrack, or just hit that link down in the description box. Our car died right about here. I went and just pushed it off to the side of the road, grabbed my mobile tool set, and right now I'm just pulling things out of the way to get to that cam position sensor. What I'm noticing is that it is a mess in the front of this engine. We knew that we had a power steering leak. It is very bad, and it very well could be the cause of the failed cam position sensor. A lot of the times these leaks will go into the electrical connectors and cause a short somewhere. So 2 big things here. We just need to take a little bit more out of the way, get that sensor out, and while we're in here, we're gonna replace every one of these grimy, worn out old lines. We'll clean everything up, and hopefully that's what brings this engine back to life. Generally like working on Corvettes because the engine layouts are so simple, but then again, there's a limited amount of space in here to get jobs like this done. Either way, belt comes off pretty easy, and now we should be able to see this thing. This idler pulley is right in front of where that sensor is, so it's just 1 bolt to take it out, but I'm noticing there's something wrapped around. It looks like part of an old belt or something was stuck around that part of the engine. It is really dirty down here, extraordinarily dirty. What the heck is that? Is that part of that pulley? I'm not sure. Get our light on. See that guy right there? That's our cam position sensor, and it's not even plugged into anything. That is definitely a problem. That wiring harness has been ripped out. I'm just trying to look. I'd imagine it'd be part of one of these big looms down here that are caked in fluid. Oh, and I'm seeing, look at this. I'm seeing a connector just hanging out. What is this right here? Look, that's it, look. So I went and got a replacement name brand good sensor here, and yeah, I just wanted to verify that it does have the 3 pins in it. So that connector that we found is definitely for our cam position. The question is, do we go through the trouble of replacing it? I think since we're already here, we should do it. But more importantly is that we clean that connector. I went and grabbed a little of this electrical cleaner, sprayed it into the plug, and when I connected it back into place, it was obvious that it was a flaky connection. Things were just not clicking into place and it was very loose. The locking tab on the connector itself must be damaged, and while it will plug in, it'll definitely just pop out again when the engine starts running. The good news is this is likely the root of a lot of our running issues. The cam position sensor is imperative to the car's running condition, and clearly it was loose when we had it running before. I'm wondering if all that wound up wire mess that we just pulled out was here to try and keep the connection in place. Luckily, fixing it should be pretty easy, but either way, I'm hopeful that our engine will now stay running after things are plugged back in. Perfect. We'll sort this issue for good once we get our power steering lines all refreshed, which I think I found the source of our power steering leak when we were taking things apart to get to the cam sensor. This small section of hose that comes right off the pump had some ring clamps on it that clearly weren't the original factory ones. One of the clamps was way too small for the hose, and someone had forced it in place, so the clamp just broke and wasn't holding any tension. Again, another small error that turns into a huge mess. This come out? Oh yeah, nice. Oh, that gives us a ton more room. If I could just get this out. There we go. So we have a big mess down here, but with that radiator fan out, we've got access to that mess. And the really big issue and my number one concern is the mess of wiring harnesses that are basically tangled along with power steering hoses and running up and over sway bars. And I don't know what this originally looked like, but I don't think it was like this. My guess is that when someone was doing the camshaft modification, they left the engine in the engine bay, they took the steering rack out, and then they went to town just throwing it back together. And there's one other thing that you guys noticed in the last video, and that's that our power steering cooler, which sits somewhere in this area, it should be easily visible from the underside of the car, is just missing. So while they were doing this modification, they deleted the power steering cooler. That was standard on every single Z06 and the performance package cars. So there's a bundle of stuff to work on in here, but first we really should get this clean. To try and contain all this grease and grime in an efficient but cheap way, I laid down a piece of sheet plastic, and then I surrounded the area directly underneath the car with kitty litter and a catch basin. Then I broke out my new electric pressure washer and tested on this small spot without any cleaner or anything. This looks like it's going to work really good. Now I opted to use this degreaser gel all on and around the engine, and I went with the gel because it sticks to the grime and to all the surfaces and it doesn't drip all over the place like your traditional degreaser. Now this pressure washer comes with 5 different tips, all with different angles, so I went with the 15-degree fan and went to town. It was perfect. The direct flow of the water from the pressure washer all stayed very contained, and when we were all done, I was just able to bundle up the plastic and throw the mess right into the trash. Afterward, I quickly sprayed the concrete barn floor just to give it a routine cleaning, and while things were still hooked up, I tried out this foam bottle attachment to just rinse out my old barn find here. And in about 5 minutes, you would think this prancing horse lived in a climate-controlled garage somewhere off of Miami Beach. And one last thing here, since the power steering pump was the source of our fluid mess and it's already off the car, it was the perfect opportunity to clean up this cake on buildup before we reinstall it back on the engine. This is one of those tools where after you get it, you wonder how you lived without it the last several years, especially since it costs under $100. It's got all these features, and I love that it's neat and compact, but it is super powerful considering it's electric. Anyway, when a tool works out well for me, I always like to share it with you guys. At under $100, it's pretty much a no-brainer, and I'm gonna drop a link to the Vevor pressure washer down in the description box. Now that we finally got a clean engine bay to work with, let's get up in there and swap out our cam position sensor. Now, a lot of people say that pulling out these cam position sensors can be a real pain, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people are replacing these on trucks with like 150,000 miles. And since our car has super low miles, it should just pop out, right? That was a bit of wishful thinking because it broke off just like everyone else's. Now the big difference is that when you're trying to do this on a truck, you have a roomier engine bay. On this Corvette, we're stuck with very limited space. I first drove a screw into the remaining plastic here and tried to pry outward on it, and well, that failed within a minute or two. And while I read online that this is a common problem from a lot of people, what I didn't look for is the solution. And I did find a quick little video from someone showing how they solved this issue. And what they did is they used a 2-part epoxy, like I've got here. I obviously need just a very small amount of it. And I'm I'm gonna roll my self-tapping screw in this epoxy. I've got a magnetic bit on the smallest impact I have that I think should fit in the engine bay here. Now we stay patient and let that epoxy dry. The idea here is that once it cures and hardens, the screw will no longer turn out counterclockwise. Instead, if we put a ratchet to it, it should turn the entire sensor, and when we are able to turn it, hopefully it loosens it up. We can pull outward while turning it, and my fingers are crossed that this is what gets it out, because if not, the whole timing cover has to come off the engine. But in the meantime, while we are waiting, there's plenty of other things that we need to take care of. Like back here in the driver corner, we found grease slung everywhere, and after removing the axle shaft, we found that both boots were torn. New boot replacements can be pretty cheap, but it's a very messy job and can be pretty tricky. So I just sourced a used replacement axle to swap in, and it cost only $50. We also had a trouble code for a failed wheel speed sensor, along with some traction control lights on the dashboard. This sensor is part of the hub assembly, and actually the axle shaft mounts into it, which makes me think that this corner was a point of impact, either from the car sliding into a curb or going off-road, probably during its major accident that totaled it out. Now, while the hub looks to be in decent condition, it's easy enough to just swap out. There's just a couple bolts here, and the new replacement part cost only $37. So hopefully it eliminates our trouble codes and brings our stability and traction control back online. We're finding even more fun stuff in the back corner as we take things apart. I noticed some writing on the rear shock. This doesn't look like it came from the factory. It looks more like an inventory number if this thing were at a parts breaker. And when we take this shock and we just give it a little bit of pressure, look, I'm hardly even putting any force on it. It compresses perfectly. Now, it doesn't just spring up, but I would imagine on a performance car like a Corvette, you shouldn't be able to easily push this down. And another thing I noticed once we got this up on the lift and I could see the lower portion at eye level here, there's a bit of Bondo just in this corner of the rocker, and then the underside of the rocker is a bit shredded. So this thing did probably go off-road at one point, and while we will never know what was actually replaced in this corner, the good thing is that all the Z06 specific parts, like the brake duct and the brake caliper itself, are the originals. They're what belong to this car. So if the worst thing that happens is that we got to replace the shock absorber, it's not going to break our budget. All right, I'm going to order up some more suspension parts and we'll deal with it later. Let's get back to that stuck cam sensor, which is the only thing standing in the way of putting our engine back together. Now, that original screw that I sank in basically popped right out. So I did the same thing over, but with a thicker, stronger screw, and I made sure it really anchored itself in this time. And I even left the epoxy to dry overnight. Now, the idea of using a wrench to turn the entire sensor counterclockwise seems good, but it was just an idea, as the thing turned a hair before the epoxy broke and the screw just spun freely. However, the screw did stay in place while I tugged at it and I yanked it and I beat it and I tried twisting it while jerking at the same time, and I even got a second set of hands to help me, and no matter what, this thing wouldn't budge. So I did a search online on how to remove a stuck sensor in a tight spot, and up came this advertisement for Mighty Mice Mechanics, where they sent this little guy out, and he did give it a good try with a tiny slide hammer, and alright, I was just testing you guys to see if you're still paying attention. But for real, the only option I had left here was brute force. I used left-hand drill bits to continue boring out holes and ripping this sensor apart. At one point, I was able to get a needle nose pliers sunk into the sensor and finally start spinning it. And I thought this would be the end, but it took hours until finally the magnet portion of the sensor broke loose and came out. Altogether, this easily took a workday worth of time to get. And while I was relieved, it wasn't for long. A quick look at the port here with my scope camera showed that the plastic casing for the sensor was still behind the timing cover. I grabbed it with my pliers, but the piece was too wide and I was only able to get a chunk of it before the rest of it fell down deeper in the cover. Of course, it landed in a super convenient spot, just a millimeter or so away from the timing chain. I tried fishing this out with a flexible grabber tool, but the angle was just too steep, and when we touched it, it just fell deeper into the engine's abyss. If we're going to find that chunk of plastic, it's either going to be behind the timing cover, or if we get lucky, we might be able to just flush it out through the oil. Worst case, then we take the oil pan off. Either way, I want to make sure it's nowhere near the timing chain right now, so I'm just going to turn this engine over by hand and make sure nothing binds when we're turning it. Big reason I don't want to have to pull the timing covers because the steering rack is in front of the crank pulley. To pull the steering rack out, you got to pull the ABS block out, which means you got to take all the brake hoses off, which means a brake bleeding job on top of that. Then the whole steering rack comes off. Then crank pulley puller. I mean, it's a lot of work. So if this thing spins over freely, we should be in a good place. Oh my goodness. Oh my, come here, look at this. I want to see if there's any more. I just turned the crank bolt. The crank bolt's loose on this thing. Look at this. Can you see that? Look at that. I'm not even turning the engine. Oh my gosh. Look at this. It's still... Is it in gear?
I don't know if it's in gear.
Well, I could tell you whether it's in gear or not. It feels like it's in gear, but the darn crank bolt was loose on it. I've been saying this whole time that someone didn't do a very good job putting this car back together. And while I don't want to be doing any of this, sometimes things happen for a reason. I want to hope that's the only major thing that's loose. We can get that sorted, no problem. But Mike found something else. If you come and take a look right here, both the nuts that hold the motor mounts in place are missing. Where are they? One right here and one right here. These couple problems are easy to fix, but it's not something you really want to find on a car you're dumping money into. Okay, so far feels normal. We've got all the plugs in, so it's going to be a little tough. And the only thing that will fit in here is this wrench. Even though that chunk of plastic is pretty decent size, I think it was flimsy enough that really, even if we ran this car, I don't know that it would pose a huge issue, but you don't want to risk that plugging up some sort of oil port or getting stuck anywhere in your $15,000 LS7 engine. So here's where the plastic started. We're hoping it's kind of fallen down towards where the cover meets the sump pan here. And then when we look at this, it spans quite a long way. So right up here is the frontmost part, and then the drain plugs are here and also here. Now, if I were trying to get this out of the drain plug, I'd probably start with this one and see what we get. And we will end up opening this up. But my friend Jared gave me the idea to go ahead and actually take out one of the sump lines just because it's a lot bigger. It should flow a lot more oil faster, and hopefully if it catches that piece of plastic, it'll move it right out of that hole. To try and coax this piece of plastic to go swimming, I just blew a little compressed air into the cavity where our sensor was, and then got everything set up under the car to drop the oil. I pulled one of the sump lines first, and while it must have been a return because hardly anything came out of it, then I pulled the forwardmost drain plug and watched every drop of oil come out to see if the flow changed at all or any chunks fell, and well, there was nothing. Last, I pulled a second drain plug and something came out attached to it, but this wasn't plastic, it was metal. Now, just a few weeks ago, when I was able to buy this car for right around $16,000, I thought I got an incredible deal. I thought I was super lucky, but I'm pretty sure luck doesn't drop engine parts in your drain pan like breadcrumbs to my financial ruin.